There are 7 baits that work so well after dark that anglers who have found them tend to keep quiet about it, and one of them was listed for $7.19. Not a premium import, not a limited edition finish, a black spinnerbait with one big Colorado blade putting out the slowest, heaviest thump in fishing, and bass have been tracking that thump down in the dark for generations. That is the secret nobody prints on a package. After sunset, bass are not studying your lure. They are hunting for it.
That's more serious. And months in the jungle. Now, I have one on my line.
And the baits that give them a silhouette, a heavy pulse, a steady rhythm, or a slow crawl through cover become almost unfair. I call them illegal because that is exactly what they feel like when the conditions line up and the biggest fish in the lake decides to reveal herself 2 feet from the bank. Every one of these 7 is proven, cheap enough to own tonight, and matched to the exact conditions it dominates, because the real gold is not just the bait, it is knowing which night belongs to it. Number 7 is the one most anglers already own and almost never tie on after dark. Number 7 is the black vibrating jig.
With the chatterbait, there's a lot of discussion on what the best trailer is. Everybody wants to know what trailer they should put.
Most anglers own one and only tie it on in muddy spring water, which means it sits in the tray on the exact nights it shines. When the wind quits and the surface goes slick, a big 3/4 ounce spinnerbait can start feeling like too much lure for shallow cover. That is the gap a vibrating jig fills. It puts out a tighter, more compact vibration in a single hook package, and it comes through grass, seawalls, dock pilings, and shallow wood without the wide wire frame of a spinnerbait hanging up on everything. Cody Huff uses a spinnerbait as his search tool at night and switches to a vibrating jig when conditions settle and fish are pinned to shallow cover. That is a decision rule, not a preference. The mistake is retrieve speed. If you burn it, the blade rolls, the bait rises, and it swims over the fish instead of past them. Slow it down until you feel the head shaking through the rod, then keep it there. And no, you do not need to spend $20 on the famous one. An original chatterbait was listed around $649. A premium bladed jig can absolutely give you faster startup and better components, and some anglers want that, but bass cannot read the logo on the blade. They can only feel whether the thing is actually vibrating. Number 6 is the black popping frog.
I'm going to talk to you about frog fishing and my general tips about why I choose a popping frog.
And it earns its spot for one reason. It fishes water where every other bait on this list surrenders. Pads, duckweed, hydrilla, matted grass. In-Fisherman specifically recommends a popping-style frog for big bass after dark, and the logic is clean. The cupped face makes noise the fish can home in on, and the hollow body with upward-facing hooks slides over cover that would foul a treble hook bait on the first cast. That is the whole argument. Throw a jitterbug or a plopper into a mat, and you are not fishing, you are gardening. 2 things kill people here. First, the tackle. If you are frogging heavy vegetation, that is the setup that needs a stout rod and heavy braid. And no, that does not mean you should spool 65-pound line for every night trip. In open water, it is overkill. Second, the hook set. You hear the blow up, you swing, you pull the frog out of a mouth that never closed on it. Wait until the weight loads the rod. Wait until it feels heavy. A frog is not a religion, it is a tool for cover, and if there is no cover on your bank, keep it in the box. Number 5 is the black and blue rattling jig. And this is the bait that saves nights other anglers pack up on. Joey Cifuentes gives about the cleanest condition rule in all of night fishing. Throw the spinnerbait when there is wind, throw the jig when the surface goes slick. Most anglers do the opposite. They ride the spinnerbait bite, the wind lays down, the bites stop, they decide the fish quit, and they go home. The fish did not leave. They just stopped chasing. A dark half-ounce rattling jig with a lively craw trailer crawled down a steep bank, through rock, along laydowns and dock pilings, is the bait that puts something in front of a fish that will no longer travel for it. And crawled means crawled. If that jig ticks a rock and then jumps 3 feet, you are not dragging it. You are evicting it. On the rattles, do not let anyone tell you they are required. Anglers argue about this constantly, and the honest answer is that some reserve rattles for darkness and dirty water, while others let the head and trailer do the talking. Carry both. One more thing on hardware. Booyah Boo Jig reviewers keep praising how the jig catches fish while mentioning skirt collars slipping and rattles eventually falling off. That does not make it a bad jig. It makes it a jig you should tug on before you tie it on. Catches fish and built perfectly are 2 different questions. Number 4 is the black jitterbug. It's where this gets uncomfortable for people who buy new tackle every spring. A lure designed generations before forward-facing sonar, base boats, and half the finishes hanging in your local store. It looks obsolete on a pegboard. It does not look like a bluegill. It does not look like a shad. It looks like a plastic clam with a lip. In-Fisherman and Bassmaster both still name it as a nighttime classic, and Reddit threads about nightbaits fill up with the same 2 words over and over: black jitterbug. Here is why the old thing still works. That double-cupped lip makes a rhythmic side-to-side wake, gurgle, 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 at a steady, slow reel. And a bass can follow that sound across open water in a straight line. Modern walking baits and ploppers are great lures, but a lot of them ask you to work them. The jitterbug asks you to turn the handle slowly and shut up. Fish it parallel to a shoreline or a weed edge instead of chunking it toward the middle of the lake. Reel it just fast enough to keep the rhythm steady, and when it gets blown up on, do not set the hook on the sound. Wait for the weight. The fish that ate it does not care that the lure was invented before your grandfather started fishing. One more thing, and it applies to every treble hook bait you tie on after dark. Run each point lightly across a fingernail before the sun goes down. Heddon Super Spook owners have posted isolated reports of dull hooks out of the package, and that is one bait, not an indictment of every hard bait made. But a dull treble on a night blow-up is a fish you will be replaying in the truck on the ride home. Number 3 is the 10-inch black ribbon-tail worm, and it is probably the least exciting bait in this video, and the one most likely to catch the biggest fish you touch all year. Bassmaster calls 10 and 11-inch worms time-proven night classics. Wired 2 Fish puts the big Texas-rigged worm in the all-time top 3 night baits. Berkeley's 10-inch power worms were listed around $6.99 for 8, which is about 87 cents a worm. You are not being asked to invest anything. You are being asked to slow down, and that is the part almost nobody can do. One documented docklight approach moves a big dark worm about a foot every 30 seconds around the edge of the light. Read that again. A foot, 30 seconds. That same approach has an order to it. Pick off the aggressive fish first, then come back and drag the dark worm slowly around the perimeter of the light for the bigger, lazier one sitting outside it. Most anglers do the exact opposite. They fire straight into the brightest water, catch 2 small ones, and leave. Whatever speed you think is slow, you are still fishing it too fast. The worm's long ribbon tail moves water at almost no speed at all, which is the whole point. Use enough weight to stay in contact with the bottom and cover, and no more. A 1/4 ounce is a reasonable starting point in moderate depth, not a rule. And this is the follow-up bait. When a spinnerbait or a topwater tells you where fish are living but you cannot get them to commit, the worm is what you leave sitting in their living room until they get tired of it. Number 2 is the black buzz bait. And this one requires honesty. Bassmaster's coverage suggests a nighttime buzz bait may hand you fewer total bites than other baits while pulling bigger ones. That is the trade. It is a big bite tool, not a numbers bait, and if you go into a night expecting 15 fish on it, you will get frustrated and tie something else on right before it would have worked. What makes it deadly is the continuous sound. A blade churning across the surface gives a base a moving target it can track from a long way off, and the retrieve most experienced night anglers push is painfully slow, just fast enough to keep it up and clacking. That is where most buzzbaits fail their owners. If a bait needs a high-speed reel and a panic sprint to stay on the surface, it is not a slow night buzzbait, it is running away from the fish. Buy one that gets on plane immediately and keeps making noise at a crawl. Booyah Buzz models were listed around $8, so this is not a premium purchase. Check the wire. Reviewers regularly mention frames bending after fish or after banging into cover. That is not automatically a defect, since wire flex is part of how these baits vibrate. But a bent frame runs off track and repeated bending weakens it. Straighten it or replace it before it costs you a fish. Number 1 is the Black Single Colorado spinnerbait. And it is not close. Wired 2 Fish calls it probably the most popular night lure there is. Bassmaster's version is specific enough to copy tonight. A 3/4 ounce bait, black skirt, 1 big black Colorado blade, slow rolled about a foot off the bottom. Some anglers even paint the blade black to kill the flash and keep the profile dark. Here is why 1 big Colorado beats the double willow setup in your daylight box. Willow blades spin fast and flash. Colorado blades pull hard and thump slow. At night, you do not want flash. You want a heavy, repeatable pulse the fish can follow. And a big Colorado lets you creep the bait along without racing it out of the strike zone. It covers flats, riprap, points, ledges, brush, stumps, and steep banks better than anything else here, but the blade only gets their attention. The strike usually comes when the bait collides with something. Slow roll it until it ticks rock, wood, grass, or a contour change, and be ready right then. 2 cautions. A reviewer of that $7 nighttime spinnerbait praised how it caught fish and also reported losing a blade when a small swivel or connecting ring came apart, so pull on your blade before you make the first cast. And do not increase noise just because conditions get rough. A little ripple helps you. Heavy wind or current can make it harder for a bass to isolate your bait at all. So here is the truth. The tackle aisle will never print on a package. None of these 7 baits is illegal, and none of them is magic. They work because they give a bass something to find in the dark, a silhouette, a thump, a rhythm, or a bait moving slowly enough to be caught. Black, black and blue, and 1 natural color for dock lights will cover more nighttime water than a tray full of limited edition glitter. Around a bright dock light, go smaller and more natural inside the glow and drag something dark along the shadow line, because the biggest fish is often waiting outside the party, not in it. And no lure on earth replaces knowing where fish live. Location beats bait selection every single night. Check your hooks, check your blades, tug your skirts, and slow everything down. Keep the headlamp for tying knots instead of interrogating the shoreline. And 10 quiet minutes on a good stretch of rock or brush is not a report on the fish. It is just impatience wearing a fishing shirt. Stop buying confidence off a peg board. Subscribe to Tackle Hank, because after dark, the fish do not care what your lure looks like. They only care whether they can find it.